Hey, everybody. This is Nevin Gusak, your host of the Populist Patriot. I'm going to do one more live stream tonight. I'm going to be talking about the train derailment tragedy in East Palestine, Ohio, which is a community that is located south of Youngstown, Ohio, just west of the Pennsylvania border. And really, it's a tragedy associated in part due to deregulation and the misallocation of resources due to stock buybacks. And certainly the Biden administration really did not do any good here. If there's any dissenting voices on that, let me know. Pete Buttigieg, in my opinion, the transportation secretary, who is really no hardcore transportation background. And I'm sorry, being the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, does not qualify you to become the Secretary of Transportation. I think in part he was picked in part because he is part of the LGBT community. I'm sorry, you should not pick personnel based on that to be politically correct or woke. When you're picking cabinet positions, you have to pick somebody based on their commitment to public service and their expertise in their field of administration. And to me, there's President Biden and Pete Buttigieg. They need to be openly and publicly pushing Congress for an emergency session to review and re-regulate the rail industry. There is a very good article and very disturbing on the Lever titled "Rail Companies Block Safety Rules Before Ohio Derailment." And this is an article with several authors, including David Sirota. And the byline here is that Norfolk Southern, which is the major freight railroad company, one of several, helped convince government officials to repeal brake rules, and corporate lobbyists watered down hazmat safety regs. And it says here, the company helped kill a federal safety rule aimed at upgrading the rail industry's Civil War era braking systems, according to documents reviewed by the Lever. And though the company's 150-car train in Ohio reportedly burst into 100-foot flames upon derailing and was transporting materials that triggered a fireball when they were released incinerated, it was not being regulated as a high hazard flammable train. And we also have to understand that since the past 10 years, at least, if not longer, the railroads have also been adopting a business model. It was created in 1993. The exact term escapes me, where it's a very short-term way of conducting business, slashing staff, increasing the number of rail cars on your rail lines, on the trains. So there was an increase in the number of cars, a decrease in the number of staff, all in the name of cutting costs, and thereby, of course, publicly traded companies, they are boosting stock prices. And unfortunately, that helps create derailments. It creates dissatisfied workforces, as we saw at the recent labor strike of railway workers that President Biden, the pro-labor president, crushed. So, yeah, this is interesting. So here we go. Documents show that when current transportation safety rules were first created, a federal agency sided with industry lobbyists and limited regulations governing the transport of hazardous compounds. The decision effectively exempted many trains hauling dangerous materials, including the one in Ohio, from the high hazard classification and its more stringent safety requirements. Amid the lobbying blitz against stronger transportation safety regulations, Norfolk Southern paid executives millions and spent billions on stock buybacks, all while the shed thousands of employees despite warnings that understaffing is intensifying safety risks. Norfolk Southern officials also fought off a shareholder initiative that could have required company executives to assess, review, and mitigate risks of hazardous material transportations. So, in response, the Obama administration, I'm just skipping over, in 2014, proposed improving safety regulations for trains carrying petroleum and other hazardous materials. However, after industry pressure, the measure ended up narrowly focused on the transport of crude oil and exempting trains carrying many other combustible materials, including the chemical involved in this weekend's disaster. Then came 2017. After rail industry donors delivered more than $6 million to Republican Party campaigns, the Trump administration, backed by rail lobbyists and Senate Republicans, rescinded part of that rule aimed at making better braking systems widespread on the nation's rails. Um, so, you could read this article on the lever. It's a really, really detailed article. I really recommend it. But that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on here. And so I look at this, and this is an example where the rail industry, the Senate Republicans, and the Trump administration. Hey, Caesar. Yes, I addressed that in my last video about Jared Nyquist. What I'm going to do is I'll explain that in just a moment. So the rail industry, in this case, Norfolk Southern, the Trump administration and Senate Republicans, they all have blood on their hands, essentially. If the people in East Palestine, as well as neighboring communities, they contract cancer, and there's concerns about that over time, that the toxins will penetrate, people will get contaminated, the pets will get contaminated, water, wildlife, etc. They really got blood on their hands. They really do. And this is a consequence of stupid deregulation. Now, am I for an overregulated economy, even within a capitalist framework? Not necessarily. But the problem is that you have publicly traded companies, because big business in the United States is so financialized. It's become, to term a former hedge funder, Sam Polk, who wrote a tell-all in the New York Times, he described his fellow hedge fund managers and executives as gigantic fireballs of greed. Well, you need a government. You need a referee to keep that in check. Just like you don't want a government to become way out of control, authoritarian in its control of the economy and the political system, but you also don't want a completely impotent government that's basically, as we just read in the article, controlled by special interests, by wealthy special interests, because they're thinking in the short term. Their brains of many a corporate executive, particularly in big business, and it just shows that they are kind of evil. Now, some of my guests, like Jared Nyquist, as Caesar had mentioned, he doesn't necessarily view them as evil. Well, I view, yes, the Russian and Chinese governments as evil. And I also view a number of these corporate executives as evil. And I will be coming out with some essays and taking my time. I'm so busy with my exercise, my girlfriend, my daughter, my work, and this channel. It's kind of hard to find the time to do everything. But yes, a large section of the billionaire class, the investor class, they're very short term. They know they do business with totalitarian dictatorships that are often adversaries in the United States. They build bunkers and they pay the dollar for them in the United States and in other countries like New Zealand, perfectly willing to abandon the country when the poop hits the fan and, in a natural disaster or a global war. These are evil people. I have no use for them. I'm not going to make excuses for them. Many of them are not just merely naive, they're very greedy and they're very sociopathic. And that's really what it comes down to. But I got to tell you, the Biden administration also has blood on its hands too as well in this, because they need to take a leaf out of Franklin Roosevelt or even Reagan, who I have many disagreements with, of course, and really be very public. and take it public to the airwaves and chastise Norfolk Southern. And Pete Buttigieg, between the whole debacle that occurred with the airlines and now this, we need to have a stronger Secretary of Transportation that's going to really take the bully pulpit and really deliver an ass kicking verbally and through public law, public policy, in cooperation with the Congress, particularly the Senate Democratic majority, to really re-regulate the airline industry and particularly the railroad industry. I mean, this is common sense. On this program, I'm an opponent of deregulation in the United States. It has gone too far. It has encouraged the more predatory and more non-productive speculative behaviors, as opposed to the good old-fashioned American capitalism, which encouraged production and innovation and research and development. I mean, stock buybacks should be illegal. That's money that could have been put into worker safety and hiring more staff. And if you guys want to call me socialist for saying these and advocating these changes to the economy, I guess I'm guilty as charged. I guess I'm a flaming red in your eyes, because a lot of libertarians and a lot of the Reagan conservatives view what I'm saying as, strange or totally repugnant. And you're welcome to subscribe and listen to this channel. But, I know a bunch of some libertarians have unsubscribed. They have made nasty comments to me with, granted, some of my more controversial points. So, I have really no use for libertarian economic theory as a comprehensive whole. They make some good points. They have some good historical analysis, but in general, they're a disaster. This is example. Again, I encourage you to check out the article on the lever by David Sirota, along with other co-authors. Check it out. It really shows, again, as I explained, the failure of deregulation and the misallocation of assets and capital away from what could have been to hire more staff and to put in better braking systems and more safety mechanisms in the freight trains. And instead of that, you just put in stock buybacks to reward majority shareholders. And by the way, I'm a shareholder with a number of companies too, and I have a pretty penny as well. I mean, I wouldn't call myself rich, but it's enough to have a nice cushion. And so I'm not saying this is somebody, well, you have no skin in the game. I mean, what do you know about stocks? Well, thank you. I have some savings and I have quite a bit of stocks. And with companies, fortunately, that also do a lot of R&D and in bread and butter, old-fashioned investment, in productive capacity. So, now, Caesar, thanks for listening. Concerning the Jared Nyquist video, since late last night, and particularly all day, off and on, I've been trying to upload that interview. That interview was 1 hour and 31 minutes. When I first uploaded it, it cut off at the 58-minute mark. Other videos, it was cutting off at 30 minutes, 43 minutes. I'm going to try it one more time. I'm going to try it again early tomorrow morning. If that does not work, I'm going to have to reach out to Jeff, tell him what's going on. He's the only one I've had this problem with. It's obviously not his fault. I'm not sure what's going on. Look, my background is in history and political science. Academically, I am not an IT person. I'm doing this alone. I receive no help whatsoever. So it's not something I'm familiar with. I've had this problem in the past, and after a dozen times, the videos of Jeff, which usually are over an hour, will be able to be uploaded successfully. I've tried everything. I will try it again early tomorrow. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is, moving forward, when I interview Jeff, I may have to do a do-over interview. I may split this up in 3 parts in half-hour increments and do part 1 and 2 and 3. Because obviously we have to try some other approaches. I do apologize to you all, but I don't want to I take interviews that are incomplete down because it looks bad for you, the customers, the listeners. I'm not going to have an interview where all of a sudden it cuts off at the 58-minute mark or the 43-minute mark or the 30 some odd minute mark. So I do appreciate everyone's patience. I am sorry about this, but hopefully I'm going to try my darndest to get this interview up. Otherwise, in the future, I'm just going to have to split up the interviews in half-hour increments with guests like Jeff, where the interviews tend to be very in-depth, and they tend to cover a lot of topics, and they tend to be very long. So anyways, I want to thank you all for listening to this. Another penny in the jar as to why deregulation and financialization like stock buybacks is a failure. But will the advocates of trickle-down economics and Reaganism and deregulation and financialization get it? Will they have a come to Jesus moment? Absolutely not. Because with them, money, ideology, and greed is more important than the public interest and maintaining or restoring a positive image to a well-balanced form of free enterprise. It's all about short-term thinking, sociopathic greed. In a nutshell, another penny in the jar, another penny in the jar of why deregulation and total wide open free markets that are unaccountable to the public interests are a failure, and why more and more people are turning against capitalism, which is not a good thing. It doesn't have to be this way. But now people's health are at stake. They're going to be severely affected. You're going to have a human cost here. You're also now going to also have the further blackening of the image of capitalism. But the most important thing, of course, is the human cost. Long-term health effects, potentially. So anyways, thank you all for listening. Thank you for the likes. Caesar, thank you for the comments. Apologize for the issues with Jeff's latest interview. You purchased volume 1 of Turning the Page. Thank you so much, Caesar. I really hope you enjoy the book. I encourage you, when you're done with volume 1, please read volume 2. If you read my book, Turning the Page, volume 1, volume 2, you're going to get historical interpretations and analysis that you're not going to find from most commentators across the political spectrum here in the United States and perhaps the world. So, Caesar, I hope you enjoy the book. I encourage others to purchase my books, available on Amazon.com. Make sure you tell your friends, colleagues, family members about this program. Make sure you tell them to subscribe, to listen, and everyone have a great evening. Hopefully some of you have a long weekend. Enjoy the weather if you live in the warm areas of the United States like Florida. And God bless. Let's just pray for a better America. Hasten the day, God, for a better America, where you have a more just political and economic system and a secure United States of America. Hasten the day that we can eventually go to a more peaceful and more prosperous and more secure United States. Thank you all. Have a great evening.